Hello, my name is Lauren and welcome to today's video. So I wanted to make a video about how to go from low to high notes quickly and easily on the flute. And I want to say that it's actually very late, so I hope the lighting is okay. I'm assuming it's good enough for this video. But yeah, I did a video a while back how to play from high to low notes quickly and easily on the flute. So I'm doing a low to high note video to go with it. I'll link that video in the description if you're interested in checking that out. So yes, so this video could be for beginners. It could be for people who want to undo some bad habits or just have a tendency to get tense or thinner in their sound as they transition from low to high notes. So I'll just start with saying it's good to have a good setup before you even begin any of these exercises that I'm about to share, to have a good setup. So I did make a video how to get rid of the air in your sound. It was my last tutorial. I talked quite a bit about the setup, but some of the general things I said, and I'll link that video in this description as well, was to cover at least 1/3 of the embouchure hole. And that's a very general thing to say, but for just to be general, cover 1/3. You can experiment covering a little more than 1/3, but the goal is to get a ringy, resonant, easy, effortless, free, open sound. The most sound with the most resonance with the least effort. So the opposite ones are covering too little, so not covering any of the embouchure hole. You can't do much with that sound. Covering too much, you can't do much with that sound, but find that spot in the middle where it rings and it's resonating. And you can take a good amount of time just playing around on that, on one note, to find the spot before beginning any of these exercises. So that's the first thing, is to have a good setup. Okay, so now into the exercises. So for beginners, 2 really basic exercises, actually 3 really basic exercises that I'd recommend is a 1-octave scale, just going up. And you can do this very gradually, which we'll get into in a minute. Another exercise is a major arpeggio, 1 octave going up. And we'll get into that as well. We'll touch on it in this video. And then finally, harmonics, of course. Harmonics are an excellent way to train the lips to be able to play from low to high, to be able to, find the right shape, to train the lips to do what they need to do to get easier sounding high notes, because, we'll get into that in this video as well. So I'll explain all of that in a minute. But so we'll start with the scale. So I'll do an F major scale. And actually you can do 2 notes at a time to start, then graduate to 3, then maybe 5, and then the whole scale eventually. But we'll just do 2 for right now. Make some changes as I go up, but the goal is to get a homogeneous sound, to get a consistent sound from note to note. So and now, so I also want to cover in this video how we can go about working on this. It's such a simple exercise, but there's so much to work on. So as we go up, as we go from a low note to a high note, here are some general things that you can experiment with that might be helpful for making the higher notes sound easier. So on the low note, your shape might be wider. On the low note, you might be angling the air down a little bit more. And yeah, you might be using, I don't know, depending on what kind of sound you're using, you could be using slower air, bigger air. But in general, like I'm frowning, my jaw is a little bit down and back for me personally, and I'm aiming the air really far down, especially on a loud low note. Another thing I notice is that the embouchure hole is right here. My lips are like an acute angle, angled over the embouchure hole. So whereas the middle register, like I angle the air more across and my lips come forward more, and this is still the embouchure hole. But yeah, so that's something to pay attention to. So as you go up into the high register, your lips will, you can experiment with your lips going forward, becoming more pouty, the aperture going from wide to more round, keeping your jaw relaxed, and experimenting with the angle of the air. How much higher do you need to go? You want to do minimal effort for, you don't want to overdo things. You want to be efficient. That's really good to remember. When you go really high, I feel like the shape in the mouth becomes a little bit even taller. So maybe low register, you can think of it as kind of wide. Middle register can be very round. And then the high register can actually be tall. Yeah, and the lips come forward and the aperture gets smaller in general for the high notes, and the air is angled down for the low notes and more across for the high notes. So I know that's a lot, but yeah, you just have to kind of go with it, feel it out in simple exercises like I'm introducing. So I'm already kind of feeling a more round shape as I go from B flat to C. So I'm playing the F scale, which is F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. So I was at B flat to C, and yeah, I was already feeling more round, more lips forward, and supporting the air, like using warm air is also really helpful for tone development as well, getting the stomach involved. So I'm making like little micro movements in these little exercises, making the air slightly higher, slightly lower, finding the spot where I get the most sound with the least effort, the most resonance. Another thing I'm playing around with, or you can play around with, is the length of the lip tube. So a very short, like the area between the teeth here and the tip of the lips. How much are you going to push your lips forward? You want to be efficient. Yeah, you don't need to overdo it. You don't need it to be strenuous, but experiment with the length of the lip tube, how far the lips come forward. Ask if you're playing on the wet inner lining of the lips. Sometimes it can start to get thin for some people up here because they're turning their lips inward. So keep your lips pouty, puckered. Allow the air to pass through the wet inner lining. Forward and playing around with the angle of the air. I do feel the muscles in my bottom lip kind of going forward a little bit, but in order for them to do that, of course, my top lip has to be even more forward because the air still has to be hitting the flute. So anyway, So play around with those things as you do that, and then eventually work up to doing the whole scale. So you can graduate to 3 notes, then 5 notes, then the whole scale. So you can kind of see what my lips are doing in general, and I am floating the high note. So, I mean, I'm trying to like, I'm not playing the high note super loud, or the middle register note. It's not really high just yet. So that's just something, that's a simple exercise you can start on, and then graduate to the arpeggio. Experimenting with the air direction, the shape in the mouth, the shape of the aperture, the lip tube length. Quite a bit more round on the C for me. And I notice if I'm going to be playing with a fuller sound, that in the higher register, that I do have to use warm air for my stomach muscles. So that's good to note too. Again, remind yourself to see if you're tensing your jaw. Keep your jaw relaxed and loose when you're doing all this. And it's almost like you have to prepare a little bit. Sometimes you just know, you'll get a feel for it, but you want to like start preparing for the next note, the next higher note, before you hit it. You almost want to already be there. So you'll already be positioning yourself for the next note, especially when you're practicing it slowly like this. I find that really helpful. And of course, the last exercise I mentioned that I would like to recommend is harmonics. Harmonics are excellent to be able to develop, finesse the lip muscles. I like practicing harmonics softly most of the time. I feel like that's a really good way to develop the kind of like the muscles you need to be able to play high notes easily. So if you can play a low note softly, that's a good start. You should just have to increase the airspeed just a little bit to get the high note out. Yeah, so I'm increasing the airspeed, but I shouldn't have to do it too much. I bet I could even do it less. I barely have to increase the airspeed if my aperture is small enough. So that's something to play around with, something to experiment with as well, and that can take time. So with the harmonics, if you're a beginner, I would definitely suggest maybe just do the first 2 notes. Get the first 2 notes on the harmonics series. So I'm just playing a low D and overblowing it, not doing any other fingerings. If you can get the second note to sound round and easy, then only go to the third note, and so on and so forth. So no forcing, just go at your own pace with harmonics. And another good thing about harmonics is you can alternate between the harmonic fingering and maybe the higher note fingering if you know what note you're playing. You might have to use a tuner to be able to do this, but and trying to get them to sound the same, what I notice when I do that is that I get my stomach more involved. I get more a good foundation of supported air when I do that a lot of times. So it helps me use my air in a really healthy way when I try to match the tone quality between the two different fingerings. So I like doing that as well. And that's also good for training the lips. You can use a mirror. It's quite interesting to see, you know, the differences you make with your embouchure without using a harmonic fingering versus the actual fingering. It might actually be better for you to like carry the harmonic kind of embouchure that you're using when you play harmonics into the real fingering. It gives my sound, I notice, more depth and color usually, and allows me to play from my stomach more. So I like doing that as well. And lastly, I thought of like, you can still do yet another variation on the scale, which you can expand the intervals. So keep expanding the intervals, F, G, F, A, F, B flat, F, C, and so on, until you reach the octave, and you can increase the intervals that way. And really quickly, I know this video, I didn't want to make it too long, but I just want to share some other things that I notice when I play from low to high that are very helpful for me to think about, that I didn't mention in this video just yet. So I notice when I play higher notes, it's helpful for me to focus on the length I have here. I make this longer shape when I'm going to a high note. I notice it's not as long in the low register. It's like shorter, and it's longer for the high register. I also feel like I get taller and taller of a shape the higher I go up when I'm playing the flute. So I think long and tall is very helpful for me. The aperture being smaller is helpful for me in most cases. I mean, sometimes I want to play really forte in the high register, so it varies. I might have a taller aperture in that case, but yeah, long and tall really helps me. Also, feeling this resonance in the forehead is another sensation I have. I know singers have this thing where they do vocal exercises and warm-ups to feel this vibration here in the high notes. I think one of the warm-ups I remember hearing is like night, 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 night. I'm not sure exactly how it goes, but that's the idea. It's like that shape, that you know, another vowel shape that you might try is ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, like feeling like that nasal or this vibration here. Another thing that helps me is sometimes just flaring my nostrils when I play high notes. I notice this opens up my sinuses. All those sensations are really helpful for me when I play high notes. So experiment around with some of those. But I think the most important thing, if I was to leave you with a couple of things, is to continue to relax the jaw. It's so tempting to want to clench the jaw, but continue to keep space between the teeth. That's one of, I feel like, the most important things. And go in the direction of bringing your lips forward, play with the air angle in general, lower for the low notes, more across for the high notes, and the aperture size. But yeah, relax the jaw, bring the lips forward. And I do like experimenting with long and tall. I know that's a lot, but all of those are good sensations that I like to focus on as I'm going from low to high. So I hope this video was helpful, informative. I hope it gave you some ideas and things to think about, things to look for as you're practicing these basic exercises. They are basic, but there's a lot to be aware of and pay attention to. So it's helpful to, record yourself, take notes, to just gain awareness of what you're doing, what shape you're making in the mouth, with the lips, what your tendencies are, so that you can begin to correct them and make your high notes start to sound easier and easier as you do them. All right, so that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you liked the video, and subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.